am going to be turning my extra tomatoes into a marinara sauce today. Stay tuned. I've got 2 large pots ready. One has boiling water that I will lower to a low boil. That's to dip the tomatoes in so that their skins come off easily. The second is to put the tomatoes in because I'm going to cook them down for a long time, and with the spices and the onions and the garlic. And then I'm going to put them into hot jars. I need to get a bowl out here for the skins and the cores. Alright, so I've rinsed some tomatoes. I'm just going to dip them down into this low simmering water. I always make sure that none of the tomatoes have bad spots on them. I was taught that by my grandmother. One little bad spot can ruin the whole batch of your tomato product. Dipping the tomatoes into hot water pops the skin, and it is so easy to peel and get off, so that's why I do it. You can peel it without putting it into hot water, but you'll lose a lot of the tomato doing it that way. I'll just continue this process until all of my tomatoes have been dipped in and their skin has popped. That one's not quite ready yet. Turn it up a little bit. And then I'll peel and core them all and start the sauce. This process with this whole pot full of tomatoes is taking about probably 15 minutes by the time it's all over. What you'll find is if you grow different varieties of tomatoes, the skin pops on some quicker than it pops on others. I think it has to do with ripeness also. My Cherokee purple tomatoes, they pop almost instantly because they have a very thin skin. If you've never had Cherokee purple tomatoes and you can try them, I recommend you do so. I say that you better be sitting down if you eat a Cherokee purple tomato. So what I'll do with all of these skins that have popped, I'll slip them off with a little knife like this. I'll take out all the cores, and that'll all go to my pigs. I'll give you a little update on them this afternoon. Maybe even some to my chickens. They sure do love tomatoes. And then with the rest of this, we're going to do the marinara. Now last year I did spaghetti sauce. I did it chunky with peppers and onions, and it was delicious, but what we found was it came out a little bitter. I don't know if my peppers weren't quite as ripe as they needed to be, but we were always still having to add something to it. So this year I'm going to try just the marinara. That way I can add a little oregano when I want it to be a pizza sauce, and we can add our fresh vegetables to it when we're cooking up some spaghetti or lasagna. I think it'll be really good. I'm going to cool my tomatoes down a little bit. I weighed them in the pot, and it was 32 something pounds. Then I transferred them back into this pot, weighed my pot alone, and it was 2 something pounds. So my estimate is I have about 30 pounds of tomatoes here. These are cooling down. I'll show you just how easy it is to slip off these skins once they've been in the boiling water. It's so nice. There's hardly any tomato waste at all. And I just take my little knife. I always sharpen my knives ahead of time, but I did not do that today. So I need to because it'll speed up the process. I take my knife and I run it around the core, pull that core right out. Then you can give it a squeeze so that the seeds mostly get into a separate container. That way you don't have so many seeds in your sauce. I'm not one to run anything through a food mill, but if you give it a little squeeze, you see most of the seeds come out. And I'm going to put it in my cook pot, and I'll cook it down just as long as I need to. The pigs will get all this good tomato juice and seeds. That'll be good nutrition for them. I'll just repeat this process until all 30 pounds of tomatoes are in the stew pot. So here it all is, all in all, after I weighed everything I took out of it. That was another 11 pounds. So I have 19 pounds of tomatoes. Most of the juice is gone, most of the seeds and all of the cores. I'm just going to start cooking this on low, mashing it up. I may even end up putting it through the food processor, but we don't mind a few chunks in our sauce, so we'll see how that goes. I'm going to get all the spices and get them all in there so everything can stew and marinate. Onions, garlic, yum. The recipe that I'm following is on DaringGourmet.com. It's for marinara sauce. They have 12 pounds of tomatoes. I have 19. That's roughly 1.5 times what the recipe calls for. So I am going to multiply the recipe times 1.5. I'm sure you can hear that saw in the background. We're always in some stage of construction around here. So it calls for half a cup of onion flakes. So that would be half a cup and then half again. But that's all the onion flakes I have. So I'm going to do half again with my onion powder and some onion salt. I sent my child to the store to get some onion powder, onion salt, you know, whatever they had, because we were making something, I forget what it was, and we needed some onion powder, but we didn't know that they'd have onion powder, so we told her to get any bit of those things. Well, she got all three. So right now I have all three, hardly use anything. Because I'm adding onion salt, and you can see that it's all stiff, I'm digging it out with my knife. This is a professional show, you know. I'm a YouTube sensation. So I do everything by the book. That's a joke. Since I'm adding onion salt and it's crumbly, I'm going to have to kind of break it up. I'm not adding the salt that is called for in the recipe. We don't like a lot of salt, and I certainly don't want it to be too salty. Alright, that's the onion salt. 6 cloves of garlic. I count each clove as about a tablespoon, and I use garlic that's already chopped in water. You can use fresh garlic, of course. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 1.5 would make 9. This is just easy for me, and it always turns out delicious. I'm sure that fresh garlic is better, but to each his own. I have to do what my time allows for and my skill level. 1/4 cup of extra virgin olive oil. So 1/4 plus half of that again will be about 3/4 of this half cup measure. I'll put that in there. Calls for 3 tablespoons of brown sugar. I had my brown sugar, there it is. 3 tablespoons of brown sugar. 1, 2, and 3. And when I'm finished, I'll taste all of this for spice level. I do like a lot of spice. 2 tablespoons of salt. which I'm omitting 1 tablespoon of balsamic, so that'll be 1½ tablespoons. All the way to the top on that one is 1½. Then rosemary, oregano, basil, and thyme, a tablespoon of each. So rosemary, thyme, uh-oh, that hasn't been opened. That's one of my favorite spices. Got the oregano. And a tablespoon of basil. This is smelling so good, and it is starting to bubble as well. Calls for ground sage, ½ tablespoon of that. I don't have any sage, so I'm doing poultry seasoning instead, which is fine because that's mostly sage. You know, my daughter put sage in spaghetti sauce by mistake one time, and it was the absolute best spaghetti sauce we ever had. And so I am not surprised. That's supposed to be ½ teaspoon of black pepper and 2 bay leaves. I'm not surprised at all that sage is in this recipe. All right, of course we'll take those bay leaves out when it's all said and done. So I'm just going to let that cook down. I'm going to give it a stir and just let that cook down until it is of nice consistency. I'm looking for a consistency that I can either spread on a pizza or use as a spaghetti sauce starter. So that should take, I don't know, it says it takes 45 minutes, but I'm probably going to cook mine lower and slower than that. And then I may even put it through the food processor after I take the bay leaves out. But it looks so yummy and smells amazing, like the best Italian restaurant you've ever been to. So this has been simmering for an hour, and the recipe is near perfect. I think it needs a little cayenne pepper, but we'll leave that for when we use it. I don't know if that pepper would get hotter over time. Oh, it's getting steamy. There we go. The recipe suggested an immersion blender, which reminded me I have an immersion blender. Take out the bay leaves. I don't want to blend those up in there. There's one of them. Where is that other bay leaf? So funny. People who don't cook are so appalled if they find a bay leaf. I never even considered it. I can't find it. Immersion blender. Make sure you immerse it. I'll turn it on high. Or I'm going to try low first. Yeah, low's going to be fine. I'm just going to keep working this through until it's a nice, even consistency. It is thick and lovely. And I know this deep pot seems like a little bit of an overkill. Honestly, I expected more tomatoes because they were so many to begin with. They filled almost an entire pot. But after they've cooked down, it's about 3 inches in the bottom of this pot. But I'm really glad that I used a deep one because this liquid has been boiling and it is splashing just a little bit. And this keeps it from splashing all over me. It's just beautiful about the consistency of chunky applesauce. That's going to be so lovely on a pizza or to start some spaghetti. And the recipe is so nice. It smells amazing. Now we're going to put it into our jars. Lots of times tomatoes on their own will be acidic enough, but this recipe suggests a 1/4 teaspoon of citric acid. I just ordered mine on Amazon. 1/4 teaspoon for pints and 1/2 teaspoon for quarts. My jars are almost quarts, so I'm doing just a little bit less than 1/2 teaspoon. I buy Classico spaghetti sauce because their jars are really high quality and you can use them to can in. So you get the spaghetti sauce and then you get a canning jar. People say not to do that. I respect that if that's what you want to do. But I have never had a problem using Classico jars. Just going to fill it up. Classico is a very good spaghetti sauce when you run out of HoMeMaDe. Ladle those right up to the top. Leave about 1-inch headspace, which is typically where the jar starts to go in for the neck. Now, you can measure it if you want to. Then I'm going to process those in a boiling water canner for 35 minutes. And we'll be finished with our first run of marinara sauce. I'll probably do this about 3 or 4 more times this summer, but you have to process tomatoes as they come in. I don't put mine in the refrigerator. It makes them mushy and they lose flavor, so I just do a little bit each week. Like, share out this video, and subscribe. Hope your day is as good as mine.